Nintendo Switch 2 as we get closer to the launch of the system. We've got more information that's starting to come out from some of the surprising games that people didn't expect to look and run as good as they do, but they are on the Nintendo Switch 2. We're going to start off with a game that we've talked about many times on this platform, but we've got to talk about it again because of what Digital Foundry has had to say. Now, I'm not as hard on Digital Foundry as a lot of you guys are when it comes to their graphics and stuff like that and their analysis with comparing it to PlayStation 4 and how it's an on-par experience or similar starting points, whatever you want to say. At the end of the day, we're getting a system with the Nintendo Switch 2 that is significantly stronger than the Nintendo Switch 1, that has better quality CPU, better quality GPU, better quality RAM, way more RAM, and has just an overall better device when it comes to running Nintendo Switch 1 games in addition to running the third-party games on the platform. So it's going to be a much improved, upgraded Nintendo Switch 1 with a bunch of cool new features like game share and other things. Obviously 1080p screen, VRR when it comes to handheld play overall, and just more content when it comes down to what they're launching with in the first 6 months. So I'm excited, but let's talk about this here when it comes to what Digital Foundry had to say, because I made a video discussing how they had some problems, like struggling a little bit to explain exactly how some of these games look better. They've been off on the system from the beginning. They first said it wasn't going to be stronger than a Steam Deck. That's obviously not the case at this point. Then they said more comparable PS4, but now it looks like the Nintendo Switch 2 is doing significantly better in one of the premier launch games with Cyberpunk 2077. So what's going on here with this game? So recently they did an analysis on it and they talked about how the image quality on the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Cyberpunk 2077 is no contest between the Switch 2 and PlayStation 4. So it's significantly better. And with the Nintendo Switch 2 version has better image clarity than even the Xbox Series S version. But it does run at a lower frame rate, which is definitely important to go over. Definitely nice with the image quality and all that, but when it comes to Series S, lower frame rate. So keep that in mind. Let's not get too crazy when it comes to the comparisons, but I've always stated that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be somewhere in between a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro, and the Xbox Series S, and even in some ways maybe a little bit better because of newer architecture, because of advancing technology, things like that, right? And that's what we're seeing here based off of what Digital Foundry had to say. You can see that they pointed out the stitching in the clothing and other things that are better based off of this clip. Shout out to my man Stealth for putting it up there. WCCF Tech also put up some stills as well from the comparisons from, there's a YouTuber that does all this. His name is CYCU1. Don't know how to say it exactly, but he does these comparisons and it shows a pretty clear difference from the PlayStation 4 Pro versus the Nintendo Switch 2 with Cyberpunk 2077. Even though these are a little bit more blurry, these are screenshots that we're pulling from it, so it's not going to be the direct feed. But overall, we've seen the direct feed footage, and it's quite impressive what this little system can do compared to these bigger boxes. Now, the one thing that I will say is that yes, the PS4 Pro, it is older at this point. It is going on 10 years old. I think it came out in, what, 2018 or something like that. So it's definitely a bit long in the tooth overall when it comes to what it can do. But I think the biggest situation of what we're talking about here when it comes to it is a hybrid platform. Remember, a lot of the newer, more expensive portable PCs that are coming out and do not reach the levels of a PlayStation 5 either, and a lot of these systems are $600, $700 overall. When you're looking at Steam Deck or even Steam Deck OLED that are much pricier, the Steam Deck OLED's $550 to $650 if you want the higher end ones, but those are around the PlayStation 4 or even in some respects worse than it when it comes to running certain games, and definitely not up to the PlayStation 5. So with the Nintendo Switch 2 with a $450 price tag for the base version of the game, being able to do what it does with the DLSS and all that, that's what people are excited about. That's what people are talking about and pointing out what the system can do for the price. So the price per performance is pretty good based off what we're seeing with one of the most graphically intensive games that we've seen in the last number of years, which is Cyberpunk 2077. Still looks better than a lot of games that come out somewhat in today's day, depending on what the developer is trying to do. Now, obviously, we're going to have bigger games that come out on the next Xbox and the next PlayStation and PC and stuff like that. But I think that if you're looking at what the developers are probably going to support, they're probably still going to be supporting PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch 2, and Xbox Series as well, just because the next generation, getting people to even buy more things is even going to be harder and harder when it comes to the economic scale. So that's what's going to be interesting with this. I do think that if the system starts off super hot, which I do think it will, and if it continues to sell, developers will continue to put their games out on there. And to be honest, there is a huge gap in what we've seen so far. The game industry is changing. Microsoft is going more third party. Their sales have completely tanked at this point overall for Xbox Series sales. Third-party developers definitely need a system to kind of fill in at this point overall, as PlayStation is still kind of gearing up for their last wind with the PlayStation 5 before the next PlayStation 6 comes out, and whatever else they're doing with their portable handheld, which now has, people are rumoring, or more like 2027 or 2028, something like that, for the next handheld. So there's definitely plenty of room for the Nintendo Switch 2 to come out at a $450 price tag and actually do quite well on the market, all things considered. And I think that's one of the reasons why you are seeing such a huge, I would say, spark from people going out there and picking it up at the beginning here, because they do see what you're getting price per performance. You get a dock in there, 2 controls with Joy-Con split out of the box. It's actually not too bad based off of my own personal analysis. Now, of course, if you think differently, that's also fine as well. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but based off of what I'm seeing here overall, based off of what's happening here with Cyberpunk, what's happening with Nintendo's big first-party games as well, looks like Nintendo Switch 2 is setting up to have a very nice launch, in addition to some great games, and of course more people being excited about the platform and picking it up. But we will have to wait and see on that. But I won't have to wait and see on all of you guys that are not subscribed to the channel hitting that subscribe button. So hit that sub button, hit that like button, and click that notification bell to get my vids, because we're dropping awesome Nintendo Switch 2 content all the time. Now let's go ahead and jump into the next topic here, because we need to discuss what's going on with Amazon Japan. We've got some solid numbers so far when it comes to the pre-orders with Amazon Japan. First time that we've actually gotten a number out of Japan when it comes to pre-orders sold. Now, we've heard about the demand for them, and Nintendo's not going to be able to hit the demand for them with over 1.2 million, which looks like allocation stock. There's demand for over 2 million when it comes to people actually wanting it, and that was just on Nintendo's My Nintendo store, not for all the stores when it comes to retail in Japan. So yes, huge demand overall in Japan, but we do know that Amazon Japan has sold around 60,000 units. Nintendo Soup has put this out, and this is something that Amazon Japan actually updated the numbers, which on Amazon you can actually see how much a system has done or games have done. They usually say if it's in their bestsellers, most of the time they will have the number there. So it looks like around 60,000 units plus already. So that's pretty good for one allocation overall just on Nintendo Japan, not including the My Nintendo store, what Nintendo's going to be fulfilling, and not including all of the other different locations that are selling units as well. So this is something that, like I said before, Japan, it's going to be a huge launch. It's looking like it's going to break the record that the PlayStation 2 holds, which I've seen various different numbers, but it looks like it's around somewhere between 600,000 to 900,000 units. So definitely 500,000 units plus when it comes to the first launch week and the units sold for the record in Japan. And it looks like the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to pass that up, because we do have a confirmed 60,000 just on Amazon Japan by itself. That is a significant amount for one retail outlet, and there's going to be a lot more that are going to be selling it. Nintendo has their own store that they're fulfilling orders, so yeah, this is going to be a huge launch. Just more information that kind of just shows what's going on there. But what we have heard also, if you talk about the US, there's a lot of stock in the US, there's a lot of pre-orders, and also people that didn't get a chance to pre-order the system, there will be extra units at a lot of places. Some stores are getting 40 to 50 extra units, maybe even a bit more. Jake Randall, he's been reporting on that there are more units that are going to be there if you didn't get a pre-order, and I'm pretty sure those are going to get snapped up for friends and family as well. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting when it comes to what's going on with the Nintendo Switch 2 and the launch week. We're so close, guys. We are next week as of the time that I'm recording this video. It is going to be here, Nintendo Switch 2. We're going to have some great live streams and stuff, so it's going to be a ton of fun. But let's get into some more information on what Nintendo's doing for advertising with the Nintendo Switch 2, and that is Walmart. They're starting to advertise Nintendo Switch 2 in a pretty interesting way. You're seeing these polls that are outside of Walmart, but they have Nintendo Switch 2 cardboard, and they have a Superstar coin and Fire Flower that are decorating them. So that's actually pretty cool. Nice way to say, hey, look, there's something new, Nintendo Switch 2 overall. So that's good. You want to see the marketing, you want to see all that step in. And one thing that I noticed too, but I was actually looking at my phone to see who won the basketball game with the Pacers and the Knicks, and before I watched one of the videos, there was actually a Nintendo Switch 2 ad on my phone. So if I can pull that up for you guys, I will. But that was pretty cool. I was like, oh snap, a Nintendo Switch 2 ad even on ESPN's own player that they have. They have a YouTube, but I usually watch on their website. And yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that as well on their own native player that they have the Nintendo Switch 2 ads going. So that's definitely a good thing as well. I think that the system kind of just sells itself for people that want it, at least at first. That's why there's been such a big, I would say, push for the system from the core fans. And I think that once the core fans kind of settle in and get the system, it's going to be on the other games that kind of come out in order for people to continue to keep the hype going. So Nintendo's going to have their directs. Are we going to see the next 3D Mario, the next Fire Emblem, the next Animal Crossing, the next Super Smash Brothers, the next Splatoon? These are all games that are going to help the momentum keep flowing overall when it comes to the advertising, of course, because you're not going to be able to sell your system without incredible Nintendo first-party games. At least that's how Nintendo sells their system. So once that continues to kind of come in, I think that it's going to continue in terms of the marketing and advertising and be a success overall. Now, it's very interesting because some people don't feel like it's going to be based off of certain aspects that they don't like, which is definitely fair. I think that's 100% fair to talk about that. And there's definitely things that I don't like either. But I think that at this point, the Nintendo Switch branding, and I would say that the hybrid nature of the device and the exclusive games, plus being able to play all of your back catalog, is going to be enough to push the system quite a bit. Now, we'll see how it gets into the stretch years when it comes to year 3, 4, 5 years like that. But I think that's where, like I said, the big first-party games and the massive backlog of titles that you can pick up day one when you decide to get the system later are going to be what drives people to continue getting it. So we'll see about that as well. But what do you guys think about these advertising that's going down with Nintendo Switch 2 outside of storefronts? Let me know as well. On to the next topic here, guys. We've got some news with Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. We've got a platform update with the Nintendo Switch 2. It is now officially coming to the platform with the Nintendo Switch 2, but unfortunately, if you want the Nintendo Switch 2 version on a physical cartridge, there will not be a real one. It is going to be a game key card overall, but it is going to be coming to the system with the Nintendo Switch 2 version, which is probably going to get you that 60 frames per second, which Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake was not 60 frames per second on Nintendo Switch 1. So let's go and get into the announcement from the official Dragon Quest Twitter account. Happy Dragon Quest Day to all who celebrate. We're excited to announce that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake arrives on October 30th, 2025, coming to Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo Switch 1, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC via Steam and Microsoft Store on Windows. Pre-orders are now available. But it's interesting to see that it's coming out so much later in the year. I actually thought this would be a bit of an earlier title, maybe summer or so, considering when they announced it and everything and when they talked about the game. But hey, look, October overall, the very end of October, almost November with this game. So definitely much later than I thought that it would be, but that would give Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake compared to this one a little bit of time to where it's not too close. And I think that Square Enix is cognizant of how many games they release in succession. That's something that they wanted to get away with. So you give it about a year in between these two releases, between Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake and Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. So I can understand it from that standpoint, not wanting to get them too close. Plus, Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake is still selling as well, so people are still going to buy the game. So I think they also don't want to intrude on the sales of Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake. What do you guys think about this announcement here? Let me know in the comment section below. Next topic that I want to move on to is the Nintendo Switch eShop charts, and it's something that I'm very happy about because we covered this story before with the sales numbers with Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, and how it sold over 500,000 units, so 500,000 pretty much instantly across all platforms. But it looks like the breakdown for the Nintendo Switch is pretty good because the game is off to a pretty hot start. It's actually the first and third best-selling titles on the Nintendo Switch 1 eShop at this point. And that's interesting too because Fantasy Life has two separate ones. It has a digital deluxe edition and the regular edition, and the digital deluxe edition is doing better than the regular edition. So people really want to kind of go in and support and get those little extra items and everything. And I always say this, man, if you're excited for a game or if you're looking forward to a game, they can always get you with that extra little DLC pack or whatever the case is. And Fantasy Life is one of those games that you want all those little things that kind of comes with it at the beginning, the little stuff that kind of helps you out and all of that. So the digital deluxe edition is going to be popular with the core fans or the hardcore fans. We saw the same thing with Ghost of Yotei and what's going on there, how the digital deluxe edition for 80 is outselling the regular edition. So a lot of times you'll actually see that it's becoming more and more common, especially for people who buy digital anyway. It's like, whatever, I'll spend the extra however many bucks to get this little thing that they're offering or these other little things that they're offering overall. Might as well get the full experience if I'm going to get the experience. But yeah, it's good to see it both when it comes to Fantasy Life at number 3 and number 1 spots. People are picking it up. Level 5 needs this, man. They needed a hit. They needed something to pop off here because they've been a while before they've had a truly big hit game after Yokai Watch came crashing down and burning. So at this point, seeing Fantasy Life do so well, definitely a good thing. And I hope that it continues to do well. But I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 version is going to help out because you get a free update. So I think people are also buying it. And then when they get their Nintendo Switch 2, you get the free update. Probably get that up to 60 frames per second. Much better resolution, frame rate, everything's solid and better, which they've already pledged that they will be doing that. So that's definitely, once again, a very positive thing. And as a free update here in the US, at least, that's better than what some of these other developers are doing, not giving free updates with Nintendo Switch 1 games and Nintendo Switch 2 games, specifically with Sega, some of their titles. There might be some other titles, but for the most part, yeah, that's what's happening there when they're giving free updates on other platforms. Not sure if it's a logistical thing, but obviously we know that it can be done as Nintendo's doing free updates with Nintendo Switch 1 games as well. But it is what it is on that one. But we're going to move on to the final topic here, guys, and that's Nintendo announcing a brand new initiative in Japan to fight, quote, fraudulent listings of Nintendo products on third-party merchant sites. So the Nintendo Ninjas are back at it again. So Nintendo has agreed to cooperate with 3 flea market site operators with Macari Inc., Line Yahoo Japan Corporation, and Rakuten Group Co. Ltd. in an effort to prevent fraudulent listings of Nintendo-related products, including the Nintendo Switch 2, which will be releasing on June 5th, 2025. Now, Nintendo and these 3 service providers will take measures to combat these fraudulent listings of Nintendo products, including Switch 2, that violate their respective terms of use, including having the service providers proactively remove listings by establishing a collaborative system for sharing information. So that's one of the big things that people were talking about, scalpers and scams and people who don't have stuff, or maybe it's just the box or whatever they're trying to do, because the last thing that you want is to see a bunch of fraudulent listings and weird scalping type of things in different situations that are happening. And it shouldn't be overall. Once again, it violates the terms of service. So yeah, definitely a good thing. And we'll see how that actually works once the listings are taken down and how fast they go back up and if we get more of those scam listings or not. But definitely a good thing. So what do you guys think about everything that we talked about here when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.